Mike Carter had fought for his country, but now all he wanted was a quiet life. After 22 years in the military, he and his wife Laura had finally settled down in a charming suburban neighborhood. The house was perfect, a cozy porch, a well-manicured lawn, and most importantly, peace and quiet. Mike loved the community at first. He greeted neighbors with a smile, helped mow an elderly couple's lawn, and even fixed a kid's broken bike. But the moment he put up his flagpole, the peace was shattered. Karen Mitchell, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, had been watching, and she did not like what she saw. Dressed in her usual blazer, clipboard in hand, she stormed up his driveway, her heels clicking against the pavement. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice dripping with fake politeness. Mike, who was watering his plants, turned around. "Yes," he said, raising an eyebrow. Karen plastered on a tight-lipped smile. "I'm afraid that flagpole is a violation of HOA regulations. I'll have to ask you to take it down." Mike wiped his hands on his jeans, looking at the flag swaying in the breeze. "Ma'am, I served my country for over 2 decades. This flag stays." Karen's smile twitched. "Well then," she huffed, clutching her clipboard tighter, "you'll be hearing from us soon." And with that, she stomped away, completely unaware of who she was messing with. Just as Mike predicted, a letter from the HOA arrived 2 days later. He pulled it out of the mailbox, already shaking his head. "Violation notice. Unauthorized flagpole installation. You have 48 hours to remove the flagpole or face daily fines. Failure to comply may result in further legal action, up to and including eviction." Mike let out a dry chuckle. Eviction? Over a flagpole? He wasn't about to be bullied, but he had a secret weapon, his wife Laura. Enter the lawyer wife. That evening, Laura walked into the kitchen, still in her work attire, a sleek black suit and glasses resting on her nose. She glanced at the letter in Mike's hand. "What's that?" she asked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "HOA nonsense," Mike replied, handing it to her. Laura scanned it quickly, her eyebrow arching. "They think they can evict a homeowner over a flagpole," she muttered, flipping the letter over. Mike grinned. "I told them I wasn't taking it down." Laura smirked, setting her cup down. "Well, they just messed with the wrong lawyer." The next morning, just as Mike was finishing his coffee on the porch, Karen arrived. Click-clack. Her heels hit the pavement as she marched toward him, clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Mr. Henderson," she began, her voice dripping with fake authority, "you've ignored the HOA's warning. The flagpole needs to come down today, or you'll be fined $500 daily." Mike leaned back in his chair, completely unfazed. "Morning to you too, Karen." He sipped his coffee. "Not happening." Karen's face twitched. "This is an HOA community, and I have the legal right to enforce these rules." Mike chuckled. She had no idea who she was dealing with. That evening, Laura sat at the kitchen table, reviewing HOA bylaws with a smirk. "They really thought this was legal," she muttered. Mike grinned. "Let's have some fun with this." The next morning, Laura drafted a formal legal response and personally delivered it to Karen's doorstep. Karen opened the door in her bathrobe, blinking in confusion. "You're being formally warned," Laura said, handing her the papers. "Your eviction threat is baseless, and if you continue harassing my husband, we'll be filing for harassment and discrimination." Karen's face drained of color. Not one to back down, Karen doubled down. 2 days later, Mike and Laura received a notice claiming that their house was now in violation of multiple rules, an attempt to force them into compliance. But Karen had made a fatal mistake. Laura pulled out her phone, dialing a number. "Hey, Jim. Yeah, remember that HOA case you won last year? Let's have a chat." Jim was one of the top property attorneys in the state. The HOA had no idea what was coming. That Friday, Karen rallied the HOA board for an emergency meeting. "The Hendersons think they're above the rules," she huffed. "We need to vote on escalating the fines and—" Bam! The door swung open. Laura walked in, her heels clicking against the tile. She held a thick folder of documents and an ice-cold stare. "Am I interrupting?" she asked, sliding into a chair. Karen's face went pale. Before she could protest, Laura slapped a cease and desist letter on the table. "Any further attempt to fine, harass, or intimidate my husband will result in legal action against the HOA and its members individually." The board members glanced nervously at one another. They weren't expecting a lawyer with teeth. Karen's jaw clenched. But Laura wasn't done. Desperate, Karen tried one last stunt. The next morning, a tow truck pulled into the Hendersons' driveway. "This vehicle is in violation of HOA standards," Karen shouted proudly, pointing at Mike's pickup truck. Mike stepped out in his robe, smirking. "Karen, did you even check the community guidelines?" "What?" she snapped. Mike pulled out his phone and scrolled. "Vehicles must be operational, registered, and in good condition." "Mine checks all those boxes." The tow truck driver, now realizing he was in the middle of a lawsuit waiting to happen, hesitated. "You know what?" he muttered. "I'm not getting involved in this." He drove away. Karen's face burned red. Laura stepped beside Mike, arms crossed. "That's 2 strikes, Karen." But the knockout punch was coming next. That night, Laura dug deeper into the HOA's records. And she found something big. $15,000 in misallocated funds. The next morning, she emailed the board. Under Florida law, HOA members have the right to request a full financial audit. "Given recent suspicious spending, I'll be filing a formal complaint with the county." Karen's phone blew up with calls. Homeowners were furious. And Laura? She was just getting started. The HOA board meeting the next evening was a disaster for Karen. Residents filled the room, their voices a mix of whispers and angry murmurs. They'd all seen Laura's email. A financial audit? Misallocated funds? This wasn't just about a flagpole anymore. Karen tried to regain control, clearing her throat. "These accusations are baseless." Laura raised a hand, cutting her off. "Actually, under state law, the HOA is required to keep transparent financial records. I've already submitted a request to the county. If the board doesn't cooperate, we'll escalate this to state authorities for fraud investigation." A collective gasp rippled through the room. One of the board members, an older man with a gray mustache, turned to Karen. "Is this true? What's going on with the finances?" Karen's face turned beet red. "It's just a misunderstanding," she stammered. "Then you won't mind opening the books for a review?" Laura pressed, her tone ice cold. Silence. Karen clenched her fists. She was losing. The meeting dragged on, but the tide had turned. The residents, now questioning everything, started throwing accusations. "I never got a breakdown of where my HOA fees go. Why did our landscaping budget suddenly disappear? Karen, you've been fining people left and right. Where's that money?" One by one, the board members distanced themselves from Karen. Finally, the HOA president sighed. "Given the concerns raised, I motion for a full financial audit and temporary suspension of Karen Mitchell as HOA treasurer." Karen shot up from her seat. "You can't do this." A unanimous vote shut her down. The next week, the county audit confirmed it. Karen had been pocketing HOA funds for years. Fines were issued. Homeowners demanded refunds. And Karen, she was removed from the board, forced to sell her home, and disappeared from the neighborhood in disgrace. As for Mike and Laura, that flagpole still stood tall, the American flag waving proudly in the breeze. And no Karen would ever dare mess with them again.